the Voice India podcast and video series. If you're tuning in to learn more about the power of voice technology and build a new skill, understand and get some context as to what's happening in India, you've come to the right place. Because let me tell you, there is a lot of exciting things that are already happening in India, and voice technology is not some figment of fantasy or it's not a piece of science fiction. It's a very commonplace technology and it's here to stay. And today I'm going to be in conversation with an expert in the field, a passionate champion of voice, Sreeraman. So Sri, in the first episode, we spoke a little about how voice has become so popular in India already. We busted a few myths and we laid the context as to what's happening within the voice ecosystem in India. So can you tell us a little about what you have on your agenda for the conversation today?
I would love to. This is a topic very close to my heart. First, let's understand what is India and what is Bharat, right? It's a very, very ambiguous term, but let me give you a sense of perspective on it. India, or India 1 as we call it, is the 100 million or so people who are fluent in English or have white collar jobs, lives in urban, and the rest is called as Bharat. But don't get it so demarcated, because think of the delivery person who comes and gives you couriers of food. Think of your car driver. Think of your maid servant. They probably live in the same pin code as you do, maybe a couple of kilometers here and there, but they are also considered as Bharat. So it's no longer fair to call it as urban and rural divide. It's a very, very thinly divided segment of people. But Bharat as a term indicates a very native speaker who is not so globalized in their approach, who are not so conversationally fluent in English. So now that's collectively Bharat. They by no means are inferior to India 1 in that sense, but they prefer to be served in their own languages. They love their own way of doing things, and tech is kind of adapting to them as opposed to them adapting to the tech. And that's the beauty of building for Bharat.
That's pretty amazing the way you put it across. This is not to say that, India and Bharat are separate entities, but more to suggest that it's a complicated web and matrix of people who are all united by the power of voice technology. Can you tell me a little about what kind of things people are turning to voice for, and who are these people?
Now let's say you are a delivery person, you are looking for an address. It could be, how do I go to 4th block Jayanagar, or it could be a crop information, or you're looking for weather information before you do your harvest in a farm. Whatever it is, you could speak in your own language and get the right information at the right time on your mobile device using voice assistant. That's one big use case if you ask me.
So can you tell me a little about how voice is enabling access for entirely new sets of consumers in India? What's driving this revolution?
Voice has applied AI in it, right? Google Assistant is an AI-powered voice assistant which understands your intent, right? So whatever you ask for in any of the 10 languages that it supports, it will understand it the same way. You could have a different dialect, you could have a different accent, but what you mean or the intent behind what you're saying to it remains the same. The AI is able to understand that. You could speak to it in a natural language and get the information you want or get things done in the way you want it.
So let me just get this straight. What you're saying is that people don't really have to pick up a complicated new language to be able to talk to their voice assistant. It's the other way around. The bot learns to mimic us humans and learns to understand what we say.
That's how incredibly simple it is.
So accessibility is certainly one of the main USPs that voice offers.
Let me take an example of my dad. He is 60 something. He is tech savvy, but he prefers to speak to voice assistants in his own language, which is Tamil, right? He starts his day with 6 a.m. He asks for, okay Google, play Venkateshwara Suprabhatam. Now, play is the only English word here. Venkateshwara Suprabhatam is Sanskrit or Tamil if you want to call it that way. It understands what he's asking for. It gives him exactly that. And I had a very moving anecdote in Fatehpur Sikri, that's 80 kilometers south of Agra in India. I was sitting in a non-AC bus and there was my tour guide who wanted to play rhymes to his kid. It's a really noisy environment, but he pulled out his mobile phone and he goes to YouTube, taps the voice search and says something like rhymes. Even I couldn't understand what he was trying to do, but YouTube understood he's searching for rhymes and it started playing. His kid was happy. Now, this is a very profound use case in my opinion because they are able to access what they want, and I'm sure his kid will be better than him. with right access to technology.
So that's so real that voice is enabling an entire generation of first-time internet users to access products and services that were denied to them or that were out of reach. So voice guarantees that kind of accessibility and puts them on a more level playing field.
Priti, accessibility being a buzzword is no longer true. It just got real with voice technology. I'll tell you why. Imagine if your phone device was in Mandarin or Cyrillic characters. How would you like to use it?
Okay.
Now that's how millions of Indians see the web when they see it in a language that's not their own. But thankfully, voice technologies, they could speak in their own language and get things done. Now this is going to give rise to a host of new ways of how they are going to interface with technology. Let's say information, shopping, help in getting a service from a brand. They could even be talking to a bank or their pizza shop in their own voice, in their own language, and they just are able to access whatever you and I have been accessing for a long time. And that's real inclusion, and that's made possible by voice technologies.
Can you give me a specific example of how voice has enabled access for a particular set of people?
I would like to quote an example built by Google itself. It's an app called Bolo. It is a reading tutor app which uses two technologies. One is speech to text and voice recognition. Now it's meant for primary grade students who are native Hindi speakers, and the Bolo app helps them to learn English better, right? So the child would speak to this Bolo app. There is a voice assistant in it. It will understand it in real time and assess the child how much accurately they are reading out the phrase there, and then it will help them to get it right, and they go to the next stage, so on and so forth. It's a phenomenal use case where children get to learn English in a very intuitive, natural way without much fuss about it. And guess what? It also works offline.
So that's really a marvel of conversational AI, am I right?
It is the right usage of AI, and it's really profound, and I love it.
So what about if the kids are done studying? Can they use voice for fun and for play?
Pretty not everything has to be really profound. There are some fun use cases. You could get Hanuman Chalisa, you could get Hindi jokes, or you could ask for health tips. You could ask for a variety of content-driven and fun-driven stuff. There's even the Chota Beam experience, which is really incredible. And children's love Assistant because even if they don't type, they could speak and somehow convince Google to tell them the story of their liking. So voice is truly inclusive in that sense.
So I think a lot of people have a misconception that voice is tied into one particular device. I know that I believed that voice could only be accessed through specific devices up until recently.
This is a misconception, and it's very common. Voice assistants are everywhere, and my favorite device is the 1,500 rupees Jio phones, which doesn't have a touch but has a voice interface in them. And there are 100 million of those devices in India. 100 million, that's 10 crore, right? That many Indians are using voice assistant on their feature phone. Second, it is empathetic and intuitive. So we are looking at it being available everywhere, available freely, available openly, and intuitive. So all of this together makes voice for everyone.
And with so much happening, I'm sure brands want to be a part of the action. Can you tell me a little about how brands are participating in this ecosystem?
Sure, here's an example that I really like. Nippon Mutual Funds, targeting consumers beyond urban and focusing on B30 cities, used a voice assistant inside their chat application. Now consumers could come from anywhere, but they could conversationally get answers about their investments, about an SIP, about mutual fund, and make an informed decision. What the brand has done here is reduce the friction in consumers' path to purchase, and thus making a really nice use case of voice assistant.
Sri, in your experience, what can be done for the community and how can people engage with each other and accelerate activity and build for voice?
There is a huge opportunity here. It's a greenfield of a space. I'll tell you why. Google Assistant in Hindi is the second highest used language, and that simply shows how many people love to use Assistant in Hindi. Now, it's up to the brands and developers to create experiences in Indian languages and welcome a new set of audience who have never tried it before, and you can welcome them by developing products and solutions or a branded experience in Indian languages.
Sri, what would you say is needed for the community so that they can be encouraged to take part in this voice ecosystem more actively and build new kind of experiences?
Building for voice is incredibly easy. Like I said, Google Assistant is a platform open for all. There are already 1 million actions on Google developed globally. India has more than 20,000 developers. If you're a developer listening to this, you're welcome. Start creating your experiences today. And we also have this entire initiative called Voice Talks India. It's a bunch of webinar where we are bringing industry experts, Googlers, trends and analysis, spotlights on developer products and so on. You could be part of it, interact with the best minds, learn more, and do check out the description on this podcast and video to be part of the community.
You heard Sri, and that brings us to the close of another episode of Voice India. We hope that you found this conversation illuminating, and we hope that you got a sense of how Bharat is accessing voice to tap into a whole world of possibilities and opportunities. Thank you so much, Sri.
Thank you, Preeti, for being a wonderful host. Looking forward to the next episode.
Thank you so much for listening to us. We hope that you found this conversation illuminating. I'm Preeti Prakash, and this is me signing off.